Women in Focus, a podcast by British Naturism. Hi, and welcome to Women in Focus, a podcast brought to you by British Naturism. I'm your host, Helen Berriman, and today we bring you episode 15. Today's episode is a little bit different in as much as we have stolen an idea from Frank over at Naked Nudist and Naturist. That's the official podcast of the American Association of Nude Recreation. We've nicked it in as much as he always does a part 2, and because my guests had so much to say, we had so much to discuss, we've had to do the same. So thanks, Frank. Before we bring our guest in, however, I want to welcome Siobhan back to discuss our letters. So welcome to Siobhan. Right, so welcome to Siobhan. Hello, Siobhan.
Hello, Helen. Nice to see you again.
Thanks for coming on. You are my letter guru, so I'm going to discuss just a couple of letters that we've received at Women in Focus. So I'll just read it out, and I won't give a name because I've not sought any permission for it, but I'll just read it out. So it's a chap from New Zealand. It says, my wife and I had a lovely day out towards the end of summer, and I'd planned to surprise her by going to our local naturist club. But listening to your podcast, a valuable piece of advice was no surprises or ambushing. And I guess I accept it's just not her thing. But the more I do it, as and when appropriate, the more it may encourage her. He's talking about naturism. And it would be something we could do together as a couple, although her view is slightly different to mine. After our lunch, we went to a local beach that I know is accepting of naked swimming, etc. In fact, as we walked, there was a large piece of wood with FKK written on it, then another one with Free Beach written on it as well. So I knew where we were heading. Anyway, we set up our towels and umbrellas and enjoyed the sun. After a swim and a sleep, I woke to see a couple nude swimming, all very natural. I thought, this is my chance. I love swimming naked. I said, I'm doing that. She said, no, you're not. I said, why not? And she said, you can't, you're 55. Anyway, I went for another swim. My shorts got ripped and I took them off in the water, but then put them back on to go back to where we were. I was so disappointed with myself. Maybe next time. He goes on to say that he had worked in an all-female work environment and it broke my heart with the negative self-talk the ladies often spoke of. I'm this, that, I'm too fat, that kind of thing. Although one lady, after work drinks, would take off her bra to relax and she would have a spa at home naked. So there are some that embrace and connect. So yes, I think basically he's saying that, he wanted to surprise his wife with a, hey, we're doing naturist swim or sunbathing. But having listened to our previous podcast and we discussed that surprising your spouse is not a good idea. Have you got anything further to add, Siobhan?
No, Helen, surprising your spouse is not a good idea.
Right.
In my view, as I'm sure you can relate to, when I've been on reception at the Naturist Foundation and people have surprised their wives.
We know of one, don't we?
We do. And she was surprised, but not in a good way. She was not happy.
No, and he's probably lost his opportunity with her, to be fair.
Yes, I agree.
So what could he have done differently?
Not surprised his wife. Try not to push it.
Well, yeah.
Talk to her, explain to her how important it is to him if he hasn't already done so. And keep the lines of communication open without any forcing, without any undercurrent of, you must join me. More of the attitude of, I would love it if you would join me and it would mean so much and you've got nothing to hide and nobody's looking and all those kinds of reassuring things rather than trying to force the issue. I understand the thinking that if I surprise it on her, she'll have no choice and then she might find she enjoys it. But in my view, that doesn't work.
It is a difficult one because if you remember in the early days with me, the more Simon talked about it, the more resistant I became actually. So I was like, why is he going on about it so much? I don't care. I really don't want to know about it at all. But it took a long time. I think patience is the key thing here. So eventually realised that his desire to be nude wasn't going to go away anytime soon. So I think lockdown helped me a little bit and give me a good shake. I said, what are you doing? Like, just open your mind, woman, and try these things. I'm glad I did, but it's this gentle, not persuasiveness, but mentioning without doing my head in. But yeah, it's keeping it open, and it's the reason why we do the podcast is to show all different women from all over the world and all different backgrounds that we're actually quite normal, and
Yeah.
the nudity actually gives us confidence. It's not like, oh, look at me, I'm this, I'm that, or whatever, at all. Far from it. It's quite the opposite.
Exactly. And it's also not, oh, look at her, she's this, that, the other. You get that in the textile world, but you don't get it very much in the naturist world when you're all in a group of women together. Nobody's saying, look at that woman over there.
No.
But, Peter's approach to me was, because we'd, only just met, well, he'd put it on his dating profile for a start, which was good for me because it showed integrity. So it wasn't something I was going to find out later. But on our first date, he said, this is important to me. I'm not prepared to not do it, but I also wouldn't force you to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then he gave me the BN booklet and he explained what it did for him and why he liked it and how it helped him in a difficult time in his life. And I understood all of that. And my intention with trying naturism was to prove to him I didn't like it. And the opposite proved to be true.
As is often the case.
Yes. I mean, I didn't want to say to him, I'm never doing it if I'd never tried it.
That's true. So that's a very open-minded attitude as well, isn't it? It's just like, well, let's see what he's talking about then.
Yeah, exactly.
And then you can put it to bed if it.
Yeah, which is exactly what I thought was going to happen. I thought, okay, I'm going to be calling him and saying, I've tried this. I want nothing to do with it. I look a mess, blah, 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 blah. And none of those things happened. And I tried it in the privacy of my own home. But the thing was, it was my choice. And this is what I want to really say to your person we're talking to. It's her choice. You cannot force her to make it.
Okay. Right. Well, thank you very much, Siobhan. Always insightful. I hope you're going to come along next time to discuss our letters. And everyone, please be welcome to share your letters, write in. We do honestly love to hear from you and we do love to discuss it.
Yeah.
So thank you very much, Siobhan.
My pleasure.
Thanks, Siobhan. Please remember to write in. You can email me. The email address is on the show notes. Or we are on Blue Sky, and I'm on Twitter and Instagram as well. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce my guest today. My guest will feature on episode 15 and 16, and it is Sarah Tayler. She has previously been on Naked Nudist and Naturist podcast. I first met Sarah in 2021, I believe. We were at Clover Spa, which is the UK naturist hotel, and Sarah's story is fascinating. When I met her, she was mid-transitioning to female. She's always been a naturist as a man, during transitioning and after. So as you can imagine, there's so much to discuss. So please welcome Sarah Tayler. So a huge welcome to Sarah.
Oh, thank you so much, Helen. I'm so happy to be here, and thank you so much for inviting me.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Now, if I give our listeners a little bit of a history, and obviously correct me if I'm wrong date-wise, we have met before, and I have written an article about part of your journey. I think I wrote it in 2022. So your journey, as I met you, was a naturist.
Yes.
And meanwhile, you had been a naturist as David. And a naturist as Sarah, and a naturist all during that transitional journey.
Yes.
Which I find fascinating. So if you could give us a little bit of like a history as to, how did David end up becoming Sarah, the history, why, that sort of thing, first of all.
Absolutely. So as with most transgender people, it actually goes back to early childhood. Most transgender people can actually remember when they're very young, actually feeling that they're in the wrong body. They disassociate with how they're supposed to be, with how they actually feel inside. And I remember in my case, it's when I was 6 years old, June 1974. Yes, I'm old. it really felt very strong, even then, that I shouldn't have been a boy. I really should have been a girl. And in every opportunity I had, I would be a girl, and my best friend was a girl, so she would let me wear her clothes. She was slightly smaller than me, so it's a bit tight, but it worked, and I just felt so good. But of course, you get caught by your parents at some stage, and being in the early 70s, where transgender was really seen as a complete freakish thing.
Or not even a thing.
Exactly. They beat it out of me, not physically, but mentally. And really, for that stayed with me throughout my life. As I grew up, every time I felt like the female side of me was trying to come out, I had to beat it back. I had to remember those words to my parents. So I spent my whole life pretending to be a guy. I had to teach myself how to walk. I had to hold my cigarette in a manly way and do things like that. And it just carried on and on. I suppressed it. I know it was repressed. And then it came to a point, and the actual time was 7 o'clock on Sunday, the 14th of February, 2021, when I read an article about a trans woman in America who was the CEO, who was originally assigned male at birth. And it went through the 17 points that the American Association of Psychiatrists look for to identify a transgender person. So I thought, oh, this would be interesting. And I went through and I just ticked every box. And when I got to the end, it was like, oh my God, what is this? And then I started to think back to all the little quirky things in my life that weren't on this list, that didn't make sense to me. And then at that point, absolutely everything in my life made sense. So the next thing to do, obviously, was to get a professional assessment. You can't go off an internet judgments. So I had a gender counselling assessment and gender psychology assessment. And they both said, oh, yeah, you are definitely trans, girl.
Wow.
That's pretty much how it started. So, yeah, I can actually remember the exact time when I knew factually I was a trans woman.
Can you remember any of those questions on the internet?
Oh, my goodness, can't remember. Oh, no, I don't think I can. I just it was a bit of a haze now I think about it. But it was the obvious things, like just naturally feeling you associate with the other gender that you were assigned with at birth, both in play, in socializing, because that's where a lot of it was. But I do remember so many other things that weren't on there. That for me, for instance, I remember back in the late 70s, Noel Edmonds' Swap Shop was on. And I remember a girl phoning in and saying, because at that time, girls were starting to wear trousers more. And the girl said, look, if girls can wear trousers, boys should be allowed to wear skirts. Oh, yes. I thought, yes, oh my God, that's a dream come true. And I remember going to school a couple of days later and saying to my friends at school, isn't that great? Isn't that great? What a brilliant idea? Because I thought it was normal to boys to think like that. My goodness, boy, was I ridiculed. I was really put down. So it's like, why do other boys not feel this way? Why can't they think, isn't it right? Isn't it obvious? And that sort of laid the stepping stone that whenever I came out with a judgment like that or a feeling, I had to be so careful what I said, because almost all other my peers who were male didn't agree. I was the only one. And that just carried on through life.
So how difficult was it then to, as you say, learn how to adopt male mannerisms and present as a male, especially as a young boy?
Yeah, it was actually really difficult. It was so difficult because so often people would pull me up on the way I was standing. I like to stand with my legs crossed. If I was sitting down, my knees are always together. It just felt right. And when I was walking, it was one foot in front of the other. I never had them bowed out and walking like I had a giant watermelon between my legs or anything like that. So it was difficult because I was always being pulled up on it. And it carried on through life. And there's a really great example of this. When I look at it, I just laugh because I remember it so well. When David was on Naked Attraction the first time, which is 6 years ago, and at the end, he gets undressed and he comes out into the studio completely naked. And now most people at that point were going, oh my goodness, everyone's going to be looking at my genitals. No, That wasn't his worry. Of course it wasn't. His worry was, you're going to come out and walk like a flipping girl, aren't you? That's what you always do in life.
Wow.
So when he came out, I remember the thought process is going through his head. It was, right, walk bow-legged, stick those feet up and like strut like you're John Travolta. And when you see that, you see him come out, and that's exactly what he's doing. You go, oh my goodness, for goodness sake, stop pretending. Just be yourself. I look back now, like, I wish I could just shake him and just slap him and tell him what to do.
Oh. So for the listeners, that aren't in the UK, Naked Attraction is a TV show on Channel 4. You can probably find it on YouTube or various other places, but it is a show that kind of does dating in reverse. So contestants are all in a pod, hidden completely, so you can't see anything, can you? And stage by stage, they start from the bottom up, releasing parts of the body. So you're choosing people literally based on the judgments you see in front of you and nothing else, yeah?
Absolutely right.
And you were there as the picker, so you would pick, you end up with 2 at the end, and then you final it down to 1, and you go on a date and blah, blah, blah.
Yes, that's...
So there's a lot of opinion about this show, but however, you did go on it, and you had a great time. And
I did.
Okay, we'll go back to that in a little bit. So when you went on the first time, had you already, I know you've been suppressing these thoughts for years, but was it there sort of active in your mind, like, come on, I am pretending. What am I going to do about it? Is there anything I can do about it? Do I have to keep presenting as this guy? Did you see that there was a way forward for you to become what you wanted to become?
No, not at all. At that time, if any of those little things came into my mind, I instantly shot them down before I really had any time to process them or understand them. And that's what I'd managed to do all my life. As soon as the smallest little quirk came in, it's like, I don't know, you're walking down the road and you see a woman, and he would look and go, oh my God, if I had your body, do you know what I would do? I would do. And it's always about, I wish I had that. If I had that body, what I would do is this, whether it was any change in appearance or hair or maybe clothes style or whatever. And it was with a jealousy because they had it and I didn't. And I wish I had it. So as soon as those thoughts came in, I would shut them down straight away if they were repressed. Never had the chance to process, why was I thinking like that? Have I asked other blokes? Do they think like that? No, never did. Just shut it down and get on.
I guess you didn't look at men in the same way, like, oh, he's got a manly walk, or did you? Maybe I should adopt that walk.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So what I would do then, or as David, would do would look at the way a man would present themselves. And when they came across as very manly, very masculine, look at that and go, what is it about that is masculine? Is it the way they dress? Is it the way they sway their shoulders, the feet pointing out and things like that? And so, I would look at those and then try and emulate them as much as possible. And that always went on, but I never knew why.
I can't appreciate these things because, maybe I would look at a girl and go, oh, hair looks nice. But with a guy, I would never look at him and go, wow, you're manly.
Yeah.
But then why would I?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you wouldn't, would you? No, it was, I would look at men at that time to see how can I emulate that? Because that's how I should be. In other words, I'm just acting, and look at women and just with jealousy. Goodness, you are just abusing that amazing body you got or whatever. Or, oh my God, you've really nailed it. And looking at how I could refine my acting role, because really that's what it was. I just spent 53 years casting the role as a bloke and I acted it. And not bad. It wasn't brilliant acting, would have got an Oscar for it, but it wasn't that bad.
Well, it must have been fairly good because you carried it off. Indeed, you married and had 2 kids.
Yes, 2 children,
And they never knew during your marriage. And it was your eureka moment, I guess, in 21 when you did your online search and then you got your counselling session. What point did you go, right, that's me, that's what I want to be, I'm telling everyone? Or how was it? Was it like that?
Yeah, it was pretty much the evening I discovered that I was. But I knew I couldn't do that until one, I'd actually had a professional assessment and not done a Dr. Google self-diagnosis. So I had to know for sure that was it and that there wasn't something else going on. Yeah, and I had to have some time to actually understand what to do. How do you do it? Imagine any listeners now, if you've never actually considered changing gender, presenting differently. Imagine if your task was to do so. What would you do? It's scary. You've got so much to do. It's about, with trans women, it's about makeup and hair and clothes, everything else. So much.
And that's just at the start.
Just the start. So really, I knew then, as soon as I had the assessment and they said, yes, but what you should do is get some clothes, go out, ideally perhaps at night, as you'll feel more secure, and just see how you feel walking around presenting as a woman. Does it feel natural? Does it feel weird? Does it feel more like a sexual kink, perhaps? Are you turned on by it? And so I did that, and no, I wasn't turned on by it. It didn't feel weird. After about 5 minutes of walking around, I was on a local footpath, and it was about midnight, no one around. I stopped and I looked down, and that moment, I knew that was me, and there was no turning back. This was going to happen for the rest of my life. It felt so right. Then the only thing to do was to let my family know.
Yeah.
They have to know first. And then I put a message. I did a video on Facebook. I believe it's still on there, isn't it? And yeah, it's basically saying, look, this is what I'm going to do. It'll be about a week or so because I've got to get myself prepared. The love that came back from that astounded me. I thought everyone hated trans people. I thought they would really, no, they didn't. There was so much support that I decided, why wait a week? If it's me, do it. So the following day, I did. David died, Sarah's born, and not one single nanosecond since that's happened have I ever questioned or doubted it. It has been so right. Obviously, very, very difficult for someone who's not trans to appreciate, but honestly, it was absolutely right. And I love it. Absolutely love it.
When I met you at Clover Spa, how far into your journey were you? Because I know you were presenting as a female, you had the hair and the makeup.
Yes, absolutely, yes.
So how far into your journey were you there? Because that was the first time I'd met you, wasn't it?
It was. I think it was about May or June, so about 3 or 4 months. Very, very early on. So, yeah, so much of my physical appearance was masculine. The hormones hadn't kicked in enough to have any breast developments. I still had male appendages below. The face was still very much the masculine face. I now had feminization surgery on that. And the voice, I hadn't done any speech therapy. So the voice was still very low and gravelly because they have a very low voice. But the presentation was female. I had a wig because the hair I had at the time was, oh my goodness, let's not even go there. And yeah, so it's very early on. It was at a very, very difficult time. The very start of transitioning is horrendously hard psychologically. It's so, so difficult. And having always been a naturist, I knew I was going to carry on being a naturist. So what did I do during this transition time when my body still presented so many masculine elements, but I was female? Do I wait? How long do you wait? Are you just stopping yourself from being yourself? Are you allowing other people's potential negative opinions of you to stop you living your life? And at that point, I was already incredibly brave. And I thought, no way am I going to let other people's opinions of me stop me from living my life honestly for myself. And having been naturist, I know that naturists don't judge people by their bodies. So actually, if you're going to put yourself in the most vulnerable position that way, in a naturist environment, it's the safest place to be.
Fantastic.
There might be some odd looks.
And were there some odd looks?
Were some odd looks. There were some quizzical looks. Which is great. That meant initially when they looked at me, maybe my face, my hair, they saw female. And then if they happened to glance down, they saw male. And so there was that quizzical look there. But I like that it was quizzical because they saw the female side first.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, it was very, very difficult, psychologically extremely hard,
Right.
but it had to be done. And it was amazing experience because then we met and then you were just like...
And I did quiz you.
You did quiz me, didn't you? I absolutely loved it because I actually had the opportunity to share my story with other naturists who were interested in what is it all about? What's it like? How and why and all that sort of thing, which of course we did late on into the evening.
A few bottles of wine later, yeah. So that brings me back to, well, just for the benefit of the listeners, you are fully transitioned now and have been for quite a while.
Yes. It was actually a year after I started.
Right.
That 14th of February 21. The 14th of February 22, all surgeries were complete. So breast enhancement, genital vaginoplasty, facial reconstruction, everything was done in that 1 year. So that has now been nearly 3 years now.
Wow. And you're living your best life.
I am absolutely loving it.
Brilliant. So we haven't really talked about naturism yet, apart from what it was like for you during transitioning. But you've always been comfortable nude, which may sound a little bit strange, being that you were uncomfortable in your body as a man. So how did your experience as a naturist shape or influence your decision, or did it not factor at all in your decision to fully transition?
No, the naturism bit played no part at all. And this is an interesting thing. When I had the psychology assessment by a specialist psychologist, I said, I don't know if I am transgender because I don't really have body dysmorphia.
Right, that's interesting.
I don't actually hate my body in any way. You know, for a masculine body, it was actually really nice. It was really good. You know, it worked well. It looked good. It made me act the role perfectly in that sense. So I didn't hate the body. I just didn't want it, didn't hate it. And interesting that they said that is an important thing, that actually a lot of transgender people don't actually hate their body. They don't like the fact that it doesn't match who they are inside. It's inconvenience, it's annoying, but they don't hate it. Some people do. So, no, I never hated it. So being naturist then was fine. At the point of transitioning, it was fine. The only thing that I was disliked was the potential for negative comments from other people, that they would see me present as a female and then see I had, elements of masculinity there. So that was the only bit. But then what I was doing there was I was concerned about how other people saw me. Big mistake for anyone, really, whether you're transgender or not. It doesn't matter how other people see you. It's how you see you. And don't let their judgments, opinions, likes, whatever, beliefs affect you. That's theirs. They're not yours. If it's a problem, it's their problem, not yours. Don't make it yours.
That's brilliant advice, actually, for anyone. And you're very headstrong and you don't seek the validation from others. And many, many do. And to be bold and true to yourself does take courage, and you've got it in abundance. So you may have mentioned this already, but what were some of the challenges you faced while transitioning and embracing naturism? Were you self-conscious much?
Yeah, at the start, incredibly self-conscious. So just in everyday life, the big fear is that someone's going to see you as transgender and they're going to hate it and they're going to hate you and they're going to swear at you, they're going to spit at you, they're going to kick you in the face. And the research I did on that first few days after I discovered I was trans before I started was almost exclusively on transphobia, how to deal with it and all that sort of thing. And oh my God, I could just talk forever on that, on how to deal with it, how to mentally deal with other people's feelings and how to avoid them, how to combat. I can just go on forever on that. But so yeah, initially there was a huge amount of fear, worry, anxiety, and preparation in how other people saw you and how to protect yourself. It's all about self-protection. From the naturism side, less so, which seems bizarre because you're actually more vulnerable in many ways when your clothes are off, but you're only vulnerable to yourself. You're only vulnerable to how you're letting yourself be vulnerable. In actual fact, it's just a few textiles coming off. Underneath, we've all pretty much got the same one of two types looking, although I was there, I had the hybrid, I had things below and, I had things growing above, and it was like, whoa, what's going on there? This is a hybrid, this is my Toyota Auris body. And so, there was maybe a little bit of anxiety there, but it was summer. I'd had 4 or 5 months since starting transitioning. I'd already been to Clover and met you and the other fabulous people there. So that already gave me a huge boost. When the sun came out and I was going to go onto the beach with this hybrid body, that initially there was a little bit of anxiety, but then I just learned to go back into the right space, which is, in my mind, if you've got a problem, it's your problem, not mine. And then carried on that way.
So within naturism, you mentioned about vulnerability because your clothes are off.
Yeah.
In a naturist environment, we're all vulnerable, but it's a trusted vulnerability, isn't it? So I'm trusting you, all of you, with myself, my naked self, and you are trusting me with your naked self. So there's like this shared respect already, isn't there?
Absolutely, yeah. And it is because of that, knowing that is how the Naturist Society works, the community works, which is why I actually went to Clover Spa that time in this transitionary period, because there is that respect. I know that going there, I was expecting maybe curious glances, maybe questions, but I knew there was not going to be any transphobia or hate or negativity that way, because we are all in that vulnerable position, and we respect that. And that's what naturism is about. It's about respecting each other and just not criticizing. You just don't do that. It's just not on the agenda.
Yeah. I know it's a bit of a negative one, but we do talk about transphobia and online bullying or negativity in the street. Has it happened much?
Has it happened? Yeah, it has. Has it affected me? Not in the least.
I wouldn't doubt that.
Yeah, not in the least. I've had, funny enough, as I was actually going to sleep last night, I've just been invited to do a talk at Plymouth University.
Oh, say hi to our daughter. She's there.
Oh, she's there. My son's there as well. And this could be on anything, but I think, having spoken to the person I was talking to, it's about dealing with negativity and how to not let it affect you, and especially online hate, which is so prolific and so easy to do.
And we all get it as well, irrespective of who you are. We all get it.
We all get it. So there are two types of negativity that I've received online. Through particularly things like naked attraction. You look at the comments and you go, really? You would say that? And there's loads of that. In actual real life, there's very, very little, because when you are face to face with someone, it's hard for a bully to bully because they can see the human side. And so there's been very little of that. And I have this great example. I just love sharing it with people because I think it's the way to deal with transphobia, maybe, is that when people see the person, they start to appreciate more. So I do earwax removal. That's my job. And I had a client who used to come in every 2 months. Old man, they tend to be the most transphobic. And he would come in for 2 months. And then, of course, in February 21, he came in and he saw me and he was a bit shocked. So I said, it's me, but I'm transitioning. I'm just being myself now. So it's going to be a bit strange at first. He is sort of basically saying, you're crazy. You need to be locked up in asylum. You are absolutely crazy.
And he verbalized this to you?
Oh, he verbalized it.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my goodness. I thought he liked me. Why would he say that? And so on my booking system, I tried to block him so he couldn't book again, but I obviously did it wrong. He came back 2 months later. He was very quiet. He needed his ears doing. I was the only one who could do his condition. But he was quiet. He was canned up. Third time he came, he started asking questions. Say his wife had asked him and he'll be in trouble if he doesn't ask these questions. So he asked lots of questions. And me being me, I would just happily answer them with a big smile on my face. And then he came for fourth time. Fifth time, he bought flowers. The 6th time he came, he brought flowers and gave me a huge hug.
Oh,
It was beautiful. And then as he walked out the door, went down the corridor, he stopped in the corridor, he looked back, and I'll never forget. He said, "Do you know what? I really like David. He was great. We got on really well. But I have to say, I actually like you more." And it was just great. To me, that shows that the way to show people or to let them judge for themselves is to let them see the human side. He saw the human side and he could see me as a person. Whether he understood or appreciated why, doesn't matter. But he liked the person and he lost any transphobia. And that is the way we deal with it. Let people see the human side. Everyone has biases and prejudices, and there's nothing wrong with that. Everyone has a hate or something, and you're allowed. But it's when you use it as a tool to hurt someone, that's when it's wrong. When you use your beliefs, values, or likes as a tool to hurt someone else, then it's wrong. Telling people, I know a lot of people in the trans community think that the way to do it is to go up to people and say, "You're wrong, you're nasty, you're horrible because you're transphobic." I think, no, you can't tell people they're wrong when it comes to beliefs, values, or likes. All you can do is show them who you are, and they might change their mind, or they might still dislike you. So what? That's their choice, as long as it's not used as a weapon to hurt.
Absolutely. And you're absolutely right. And it's true of any minority, it's ignorance. And if people aren't aware and don't know, then they write it off as being weird.
Yeah.
If it's not something they've experienced or are familiar with or have any point of reference to, then they'll write it off as weird. So back in 30, 40 years ago, gays, weird, odd, let's write them off. Look how far that has come.
Yeah.
And look how far the trans journey has come in terms of acceptance.
Yeah.
And the same is still true of gymnophobia,
Yes.
the prejudice against naked people. Okay, so you present as a nude person in public, for me, like on social media or whatever, then I'm weird or perverse.
Yes.
Because I'm not wearing any clothes. But that, again, is just education. It's not about me showing off. I mean, I'm certainly not about showing off. But it's just about, it's all very well people sitting behind the keyboard. Right, transgender, weirdo, naturist, weirdo, gay, lesbian, weirdo, whatever that little minority is, if it's outside of their comfort zone and they don't understand what it is, it's very easy to write it off as weird.
Yeah, absolutely. It is. But the one thing you can't do is go up to their face and tell them they're wrong. No one ever accepts being told they're wrong, whatever it is, even if they know they are. You cannot tell people they're wrong in their thoughts. It has the opposite effect. They become more militant and things like that. So actually, all you can do is just show them. And these things over time, naturism has over time become more accepted, not because people have been marching down Whitehall naked with banners. No, it's because more things are coming out. The naked bike riding, skinny dips and things like that. General, small things in society that are not militant, can you be wrong, just saying, this is us doing our thing. You can like it or you can move on. Your choice, whatever. You can be curious or not. You can join in or not. And so it is those steps of just letting people see it's there, whether you like it or not, it's there. And so people see the human side. And it's not a militant thing. It's not telling you you have to think a certain way. It's giving you the option to consider your views. And that is the way forward. And that's how it's been with gays over the last 50 years, more so with naturism now, which has been there for so long. But really, I think in the last 10, 20 years, there's been a huge increase in acceptance of it as well.
Yeah, you're right. And the more we talk about anything niche or unusual or what is regarded in the wider society as strange or weird, the less strange or weird it becomes and properly integrated into society as it should be.
Exactly, yes.
Right. When were you first aware of naturism? Was it always something around in your life?
Yeah, I mean, when I was very young, I remember being quite curious about it. And when I mean very young, I mean when I was 6 years old, I had a male body. My best friend had a female body. I didn't like my body because it meant I had to act like a boy. I wanted to have the girls. So there was always that interest in it. And of course, at that age, it's not sexual. It's about the presentation of the physical body. So there's always been that interest when I was young, but coming from a quite prudish textile family, there was never an opportunity to explore or express that. And it wasn't until I was 18 when I could actually attend the local naturist place. It was very pure naturist. And so I was 18, I could go there on my own, and I went, and it was a lovely day. It was great. I was scared because I hadn't done this in public, but there were people all ages, there were families. It was absolutely wonderful. And it just felt so comforting and relaxing. And yeah, that was my first proper introduction into naturism. But it was actually not too long after that that I eventually found the woman who's going to be my wife, who very much even more prudish and assertive and non-naturist. And so, yeah, I never got the opportunity to explore it again until we separated very, very amicably. We're still really good friends about 8 or 9 years ago. And then I could be myself. That really was the start of my life from that point.
Your wife's head must have spun off its neck. Naturism, trans, like, whoa!
What have you done to me? Oh my goodness, yeah. What happens? So when we met, I did say I was naturist at the very start. And she said, that's fine. I don't like it. I wouldn't be comfortable with it. So are you okay not doing naturism while we court? Oh God, that's going back a bit, isn't it?
Yeah, showing your age again.
Absolutely. And so, yeah, that's absolutely fine. To me, being with the right person, the naturism wasn't a big part of my life at the time. I hadn't really had a chance to make it a big part of my life. So the naturism, she always knew. The trans, when I went to the house to speak to the children, to tell them, which I got, amazing response. We were all in tears with joy.
Aww.
And then I spoke to my ex, and she smiled and said, I always knew there was something about you. Yes, I think you always thought I was gay. And she said, well, I didn't know, because you didn't really seem gay. I said, no, actually, I was bisexual. I just repressed it. I just never talked about nice guys with their bodies. I just talked about the women. So yeah, she said, I always knew there was something about you. You were far too effeminate for a guy. And she always knew I was naturism. So actually, it wasn't too much of a shock for her. Thank goodness. Otherwise, I'd have to do CPR.
I suspect it answered a lot of questions that she'd built up over the years. Oh, okay, this all makes sense now.
Exactly right. There was so much. We lived in New Zealand. We had a big group of friends. We often had every other Friday night, we'd host a party at each other's place. And there were the guys and there were the girls, that typical New Zealand culture. And I had to sit with the guys while they swigged their stubbies of beer and talked about sport. It's like, really? I want to be there making the vol au vents. About Christine down the road who had that hairstyle done. Actually, that's what I wanted to do. No, I had to mix with it, and it just didn't work. It was so hard. Every opportunity I had, I would get away from that. So all of those little things in life were there. Yeah. All the little clues were there.
Wow. So on the intersection of gender and naturism, has being a transgender woman within a naturist community felt different from being a man in the same space?
Oh, my goodness. What a fabulous question. Do you know what? I don't actually think there's been any difference from the naturist community in how they see you, treat you, integrate, accept you, anything. I don't think there's been a difference there, but there has been a difference in my attitudes. So David was naturally fairly quiet, shy, and actually a bit of a scaredy cat, a bit of a coward in some ways. And so when I started the journey, I had no choice but to, pardon the pun, I had to grow some, even though I had them dropped off later. But you can't do this without actually being really darn brave. And
really brave.
My whole mental strength and attitude completely changed. So I would say that being trans woman rather than acting as the male in naturist community, I wasn't treated any different, but I acted different. I was much more confident, much more relaxed as well. I think sometimes because In the naturist community, I was a single male, and single males, a very tiny minority, have a huge effect on the negative perception of naturism. And it's just that tiny minority. So you're always being a bit protective and fearful that in any way that you might come across or portray those elements. So you tend to be a bit inhibited in a way.
Mm-hmm.
But as a trans woman, I've got no inhibitions whatsoever. And, any of that stuff that I sort of might just held back on, no, not at all. So I think, going back to the answer, the community doesn't treat you differently, but I was different. My mental attitude, my outgoing was a different attitude altogether.
But that leads me on to another point, as a lot of women are fearful about trying naturism for the fear of unwanted attention, particularly on beaches or, where it's not an organised naturist event. Have you had any experience of that?
Yeah, absolutely. So having acted and presented as a male in the naturist community, I got to see how men, women, couples, everyone interacted in the different environments. And the different environments generally are what we might call the safe environments, which is a club or a meeting or something like that, and the lesser safe environments, which is open public, like a naturist beach or something like that.
Mm.
So I was okay. I was confident in going to the least safe, let's say, places, like a public beach, as a single woman, because I knew generally what everyone was thinking, what they're doing. I'm a people person. I watch people's body language. And yes, in that environment, there was not unsafe practices, but things that if you weren't well aware and very confident, could be really quite intimidating.
Right, that's nicely put, yeah.
Yeah, so, but I knew what they were, when they were coming and how to deal with them. Whereas when you're in a very safe environment, so a proper naturist club environment.
Or an organised event, something like that.
Something like that. There's no danger whatsoever. There is nothing to fear there. It is beautiful. It is safe. Now, I do have an interesting thing. A friend of mine is trans. I've got quite a few trans you might expect because they're all mixed in that community. She's a good friend of mine, and she has gone through most of the operations. So physically, her body is very feminine, and she was curious to try naturism. I said, okay, well, best thing is, we're in Cornwall, and I said, probably the best thing is we'll go to the club down at Downderry. I said, or, because it's not open for a few months, we can go to the beach, which is open. She said, oh, I'll do the beach. Okay, that's fine. So we went to the beach, and to me, it was an all beach. Yes, lots of single guys. Almost everyone was respectful. One or two were not. That's what I expect. And so I was curious. I spent the time teaching her what was going on, who had less honourable ideas or intentions in their minds, and who was a wonderful person who actually, because they didn't have a nice chat to and feel safe. And she was amazed. She was going, oh my God, I couldn't see any of that. Really? Was that going on? Was that going on? I said, yeah, did you not notice how somebody stood, how they reacted, how if I tried to block and stop the conversation, they would try and carry on. She didn't notice it. So she was incredibly naive with how some people can act away from actually a nice, proper, safe, naturist environment. And so that naivety is not safe. To be a single woman, trans or not, going into a public naturist area, you need to know what is going on. You need to be with others first. You need to learn. If you don't have someone to go with, do not go there. You're fine, but you won't understand what's going on, and it's scary. So the only way to do it is to be in a proper organised club or event with other women there as well to understand what goes on.
Yeah. You're not saying that anytime you go to a public beach, you're at risk. But what you're saying is
Never. I still get
that there is a minority of people that will upset the status quo because they're there for the wrong reasons. And it doesn't matter whether it's naturism or not, you're going to get people like that.
Yeah.
What was your friend's expectations then of going to Naturist Beach? Did she just think she's going to chill out, go for a walk?
Exactly. Yes, that's what she wanted.
Yeah.
It was her first public outing, let's say, naturism in any way. But she was very, very keen that, she's like me, transgender woman. She's gone through the surgery and she's so confident and relaxed in her body. She actually sort of wanted to be up in nature and to say, oh my goodness, this is it. Nature is complete. I'm complete. She wanted to have that feeling. So yeah, she wanted not the public interaction as such. She wanted validation from people looking. She just wanted to be how we want as naturists, just to be there and relax. But she couldn't.
As I said, it's a fascinating discussion and it will continue across episode 16, so be sure to tune in for that. Please remember to like, subscribe, thumbs up, all of that stuff on the podcast. We do like interacting with you. We do like to hear from you. We do welcome your suggestions also. Thanks for listening. I've been your host, Helen Berriman. Tune in next time as we bring more women in focus.